Zainab was exhausted. She had just returned from the general hospital where she had waited almost the entire day to see a doctor. The queues were long, the nurses were overworked, and the little money she had barely covered her transportation and lab tests. Still, she was grateful the checkup was done. With her due date only days away, every movement felt like a mountain, and today was no different. As she trudged toward the compound she shared with her husband, Ibrahim, she craved nothing more than to lie down and rest her swollen feet. But as she approached the familiar rusted gate of their one-room apartment, her heart dropped. The gate was padlocked. She blinked hard, thinking she was seeing things. Maybe Ibrahim forgot she had gone to the hospital? Maybe he thought she would be home earlier? She knocked softly at first, then harder. Nothing. Al-Haji Ibrahim, she called. I'm back. Please open. No response. She brought out her small phone. 1 bar of battery left. She dialed his number. Switched off. Panic crept in. She looked around, hoping a neighbor might emerge and help. A little girl peeped from behind a curtain in the next compound, then quickly disappeared. Zainab's mind raced. There had been a fight the night before. Ibrahim accused her of not respecting him, claiming she had become too stubborn since the pregnancy. He stormed out and didn't come back till dawn. She never imagined he'd actually lock her out, especially not like this. Her stomach tightened, not from anxiety this time, but pain. A sharp contraction struck like lightning across her abdomen. She staggered, holding onto the gate for support. Not now. Please, not now, she begged silently. But the pain came again, stronger this time, wrapping around her like a belt pulled too tight. She sat on a broken concrete block beside the gate, breathing hard. Sweat mixed with tears. The sun was beginning to set, and people passed without stopping, most assuming she was just another tired pregnant woman. Then her water broke. She looked down in shock as warm fluid soaked her wrapper. Her body trembled. She knew what this meant. Labor had begun. And she was alone. Right there on the dusty street, with a locked gate, a dead phone, and a baby on the way. Zainab cried out, gripping her belly as the contractions came in waves, fierce, unrelenting. The pain was like nothing she had ever experienced before, and now there was no doubt. Her baby was coming. A neighbor across the street, Mama Titi, heard the groans and rushed outside. The sight shocked her, a heavily pregnant woman sitting on the bare ground, soaked, holding her belly with panic in her eyes. Zainab. Ah, you unborn here, she gasped, rushing toward her. Ibrahim. Locked me out, Zainab muttered between breaths. I have nowhere to go. Without a second thought, Mama Titi called out to her teenage daughter. Titi, bring wrapper and bucket. Quick. Together, they helped Zainab across the road into the small veranda in front of their apartment. It wasn't much, a bench, a table fan, and a curtain hanging over the front door, but it was better than the dirt. Titi, call that nurse, way day the other street. Run. Zainab was laid down on a mat. Mama Titi fanned her with a folded newspaper, murmuring prayers under her breath. Minutes passed like hours. The pain grew, and Zainab screamed with every push. Curious neighbors gathered, whispering and peeping, some helping, some just watching. The nurse arrived, breathless and armed with a black bag full of supplies. What kind of nonsense is this? She muttered, washing her hands in a basin. Why is she not in the hospital? She was locked out, Mama Titi answered, shaking her head. The nurse didn't reply. She got to work immediately. It was a risky delivery, and she knew time was running out. Zainab screamed one last time, and then silence. A baby's cry pierced the air. A girl. The crowd gasped, then clapped. Zainab didn't even have the strength to hold her baby at first. Tears streamed down her face. Relief, pain, joy, all tangled into one. There, on a neighbor's veranda, surrounded by strangers and sympathy, Zainab gave birth to her daughter. A child the father didn't even wait for. But something in that moment shifted. Though she was abandoned, she was not alone. And the world was about to hear her story. Zainab lay weak but grateful, holding her newborn baby girl in her arms. The pain hadn't completely gone, physically or emotionally, but as her daughter's tiny fingers curled around hers, a spark of strength lit up inside her. Meanwhile, across the street, a bystander had recorded the entire incident, from Zainab screaming in labor on the sidewalk to the dramatic birth on Mama Titi's veranda. The video was shared online that very night. By morning, it had gone viral. Pregnant woman locked out by husband gives birth on street. Where is the humanity? Who does this to a pregnant wife? The outrage exploded. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, blogs, even local radio stations picked it up. Everyone was talking about Zainab. The hashtags trended. Hashtag justice for Zainab, hashtag say no to abandonment, hashtag support pregnant women calls came from journalists, NGOs, women's rights activists, and even politicians. Mama Titi's veranda, once just a quiet neighborhood hangout, became a mini press center. Zainab was moved to a hospital for proper care, this time paid for by strangers who felt her pain. Ibrahim, her husband, tried to lie low, but social media found him. Pictures of him surfaced. Neighbors confirmed he had left her out on purpose. Some even alleged this wasn't the first time he had mistreated her. He became a symbol of everything wrong with domestic neglect. But for Zainab, something beautiful began to grow out of that pain. Gifts began pouring in: baby supplies, clothes, food, even offers for accommodation. A women's foundation offered her a scholarship to finish her tailoring training. She was no longer the woman abandoned during labor. She was Zainab, the symbol of survival. And as she watched her daughter sleep peacefully beside her in the hospital crib, she whispered, "I'll make sure you never feel unwanted." Zainab was discharged from the hospital with more than just a baby in her arms. She was now carrying the weight of a new reputation and a public eye watching her next step. Mama Titi took her in for a while, refusing to let her return to the house where she was once locked out like an animal. Zainab, though grateful, remained quiet and withdrawn. The betrayal cut deep, not just because of what Ibrahim did, but because of what it exposed. She had never really been safe in that marriage. But rest didn't last long. A local TV station reached out to interview her, and her calm, soft-spoken nature melted hearts all over again. Her face, wrapped in a simple scarf, with her baby cradled on her lap, became a symbol of resilience. "I didn't expect anyone to care," she said during the interview. "I thought I was alone." That line alone sparked a flood of donations. A popular singer reposted the video. A women-led NGO created a fundraiser in her name. In just a week, Zainab had enough to rent a small apartment and buy equipment to start her own tailoring business, a dream she had buried under years of emotional abuse and silence. But just as her story seemed to turn for the better, Ibrahim resurfaced. He came knocking not out of guilt, but anger. "You've disgraced me online. You'll pay for it," he shouted outside Mama Titi's compound. Zainab, holding her baby, didn't flinch this time. People had gathered. Cameras were now everywhere. And for the first time in her life, Zainab stood tall. "You left me on the street to die," she shouted back. "But God turned my pain into purpose. You don't get to show up now." Someone filmed it. Again, it went viral. Zainab's voice became louder than Ibrahim's threats. The police stepped in. A restraining order followed. The same people who had ignored her pain were now standing with her, ensuring she would never face him alone again. Zainab, once voiceless, once dismissed, had found her strength. And this was just the beginning. Months passed, and with each sunrise, Zainab transformed. The once timid, broken woman was now a rising symbol of strength and hope for many others like her. Her tailoring shop, Touch Designs, opened on a quiet corner in the heart of the community. It wasn't flashy, but it was full of life. Bold fabrics, gentle laughter, and the hum of her sewing machine filled the air. Women began to gather not just for clothes, but for comfort, stories, and healing. Zainab started a weekly support group for women who had suffered domestic abuse and neglect. She called it From Tears to Triumph. Each meeting ended in prayer, a shared meal, and hugs that said, "You're not alone." Soon, a well-known women's rights organization reached out to partner with her. Zainab began speaking at events, sharing her story not for sympathy, but to spark change. She used her voice to challenge harmful traditions, call out silence, and inspire legislation that better protected women and mothers. Ibrahim, meanwhile, had faded into the shadows. No one had time for a coward who abandoned his pregnant wife in her hour of need. His threats no longer held power. Zainab had become bigger than her past. Her daughter, little Jamila, grew into a bright, bubbly child, a daily reminder of the pain that birthed purpose. One day, standing on stage at a women's conference, Zainab looked out at the crowd of young girls, mothers, and survivors. She smiled and said, "They thought locking me out would destroy me, but God used that door to open the world for me." Applause erupted. Some cried. Some stood. Everyone left inspired. Zainab's story didn't end in pain, it ended in power. If you have encountered such like Zainab, share your story and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to reach others. Thank you for listening. I will see you in another story tomorrow.